Israeli enemy has actually targeted many of the pages. It has been exploded at the same time.
That was Secretary General of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, speaking through a translator in response to the pager and walkie-talkie explosions across Lebanon over the past 2 days, which have killed 37 people so far and injured more than 3,000. Thousands of so-called pocket pagers, low-tech, supposedly secure, and used by Hezbollah members, simultaneously detonated across Lebanon on Tuesday, killing at least a dozen people and injuring thousands.
The explosions happened in hospitals because some medics were carrying them, in pharmacies, in markets, in shops, in houses, in cars, in the streets, where many civilians were there, along with women and children.
A second wave of explosions took place on Wednesday, this time affecting handheld radios, or so-called walkie-talkies. Hassan described the operations, which have been widely attributed to Israel's Mossad, as constituting a declaration of war. For more on that, we go to Moscow to speak with analyst Mark Sleboda.
You know, Mark, a lot of folks listening probably aren't old enough to even know what they sound like, but almost everybody I knew had to carry a beeper back in the 80s. And nobody really worried that when you hear it make that weird noise, if it was about to blow up. What is this? I've never heard of this in warfare before.
What has happened, and Israel is neither confirming nor denying as their usual. In fact, they say we don't confirm or deny, right? Which, is as much as an admission of guilt. But even if we take Axios, which is, a generally a very pro-American establishment position, but they make clear that this was an Israeli special operation that has been months, if not years, in the work. They managed somehow to infiltrate the supply chain of pagers, of beepers, right? For Hezbollah, and for those in the U.S. who are like, what is with this antiquated technology? Well, actually, there are large parts of southern Lebanon without cell phone networks, right? I mean, this place is Lebanon has had an economic catastrophe they've had multiple economic catastrophes and military and social catastrophes for multiple reasons for a long time. But certainly the U.S. attempt to overthrow the Syrian government had a very deleterious effect on the Lebanese economy, which was intrinsically entwined with the Syrian economy.
And that's on now this is the 13th year, I think, of that.
Yes. But on top of that, I would imagine that Hezbollah members probably don't like to use, shall we say, smartphones, because smartphones are such an easy way for intelligence agencies to find you, like, say, Mossad. Which is very good. But when they discovered, I don't think it's anything new that Hezbollah was using pagers, then they went to work with, I think something that can be best described as a kind of evil genius Bond villain plan.
Right.
So they infiltrated the network of the production of these pagers. Now, supposedly, the parent company is in Taiwan of the pagers that provided this, and we Taiwan is essentially a U.S. A proxy occupied Chinese island, and they the Taiwanese company in question says, oh, no, it had nothing to do with us. We outsourced that work to a company in Europe. Well, the company in Europe actually doesn't exist. It's like a fake company, a front. It doesn't have an office or anything like that. Certainly doesn't have any manufacturing facilities. So we're going to have to find out some more on that scale. But evidently what happened is that Israeli intelligence, Mossad, they laced pagers destined for Hezbollah with a small amount of explosive. And then they sent a kind of an over concentration of signals to them, which heated up the battery of these devices, and that heat triggered the explosions. Right. That was so. And it must be said that, while this is being presented certainly in the Western media as some kind of, sticking it to the terrorists kind of deal, I beg to differ that Hezbollah is in any way, shape, or form a terrorist organization. They certainly are an anti-Israeli occupation of Palestine organization. But Hezbollah is also an elected political party in Lebanon, a rather substantial one. And they are effectively running all of South Lebanon, right? They do all the civil service. So while some of these people who have been killed or injured in this were fighters, others are essentially politicians, civil servants, a whole range. And basically, you've got someone in Hezbollah, whether they were an actual quote unquote fighter or working at a desk somewhere, they're out walking their kid in a stroller, and suddenly a mini bomb goes off on their hip.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, the end result of this thus far is that 12 people have been killed, but thousands, I saw upwards of 3,000, 4,000 have been injured. The explosion wasn't enormously powerful, but when you've got a bomb going off on your hip, I would expect that the fatality rate, I've heard that more than 500 people who are wounded are in critical condition. So a lot of injuries, a lot of significant injuries. And of course, a lot of civilians were injured in this as well, because anyone around them, which has led the Russian government to call this a heinous, a monstrous act of terrorism by the Israeli government. First of all, it must be said, it's a huge intelligence coup for them, for their covert operations to have done this. And actually, a word has come out from Hamas that Israel tried a similar thing against Hamas back in 2009. But Hamas evidently, they say, detected it beforehand, and that prevented, a similar incident from occurring. But according to Axios, at least, this was meant as to be launched if a major military incident, if a major military conflict erupts between Hezbollah and Israel. But that Israel decided to launch it now, supposedly because they were worried that Hezbollah might eventually find out about it. I find that particular line to be the absolute weak part in this Axios article, and it seems pretty clear to me that Netanyahu decided to launch this now because he hasn't gotten the major escalatory war that he wants with Hezbollah and Iran, and once again he's trying to poke them with a stick and saying, attack us, darn you, attack us. And this is another provocation. We've seen Hezbollah commanders killed. We've seen a Hamas political leader assassinated with no response yet that we know of from Iran, and now this, and it's not over, because the day after this pager attack, evidently it's happening again. This time with walkie-talkies, which used by Hezbollah, which is also evidently their supply chain has been infiltrated, and it's causing a whole new wave of we don't even know how many people yet being affected by this. So it's, on a, if you are an evil genius Bond villain, this must seem like a real coup. It is, but I mean, let's figure that this was being done by someone against U.S. Military or U.S. officials or something like that, and to imagine how it would be treated in response.
Look around, just look around the world at how it's been, similar things have been treated. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that this type of attack really opens a Pandora's box and sets a precedent. Because with drones and artificial intelligence and the increasing amount of personal electronics, take a look at your cell phone, take a look at your smartphone, and imagine it being used as a weapon to kill you. We're pretty close to that, and this is now, I guess, kosher because Israel did it.
This is practically Fred Flintstone technology being used for this. I'm assuming whoever the purchasing agents are at Hezbollah that acquires various tools and implements that they use is going to have to be looking at a top-to-bottom review. I assume everyone with any kind of engagement in the international sphere and elsewhere has to look top to bottom that these and almost anything can be repurposed into a weapon, and the more widely distributed, in other words, the more popular or the more common the thing is, the greater the threat.
All I got to say is, I don't know about you, but I'm going to buy all my personal electronics that aren't already from China now, because they're much less likely. Of course, the U.S. is saying we know nothing, we see nothing, right? But it's rather interesting that the American University in Lebanon just over a week ago had all of their pagers recalled.
Ooh, all right, Mark, on that note, we'll have to speak with you again next week. I appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thanks for having me.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.